In a myriad of ways, this was a tough episode to make. I already had this game planned before Akira Toriyama's passing, but I scheduled it for this month. I've thought about moving everything around, but personally, I don't feel comfortable doing it just to be in the moment and, to catch a couple of cloud points. But that's just me, and I'll never hold it against anyone who expressed their grief and thankfulness to Toriyama-san their way. Now, this wasn't supposed to be a tribute, and it's hard to be lighthearted and crack a couple of jokes now that he's passed. But knowing his work, he'd want us to keep on trucking, get right back up, and put our best foot forward. So, this is now my tribute to a great creator who made us believe in our potential and encouraged us to scream our passion at the top of our lungs. Toriyama-san, hontou ni arigatou gozaimasu. Now, of all the Dragon Ball games, this is the one I recall the most. And I was so excited to play it again after all these years and talk about it. Then, I did. Dragon Ball Z Idainaru Dragon Ball Densetsu, or Dragon Ball Z The Legend, is a fighting game produced by Bandai in 1996 for both the Sega Saturn and the PlayStation. For this video, we'll be playing the PS1 version because, well, that's the point of the series. It's a bit difficult to properly describe how the fighting works in this game. Budokai and Fighter Z, this is not. Think of it as a cinematic, momentum-based team battle. Still a bit confused? Then let's instant transmission to the combat right away. In every match, you get to pick up to 3 characters from the Dragon Ball Z series. You have Goku, Piccolo, Nappa, Big Boo, Little Boo, Very Angry Boo. Sadly, missing from the series are some of the Z Warriors, namely Tenshinhan and Yamcha, who's busy being dead. But Krillin's here, and that's correct, because he's awesome. Each character from your team picks a target, and you can switch up the character you choose plus your target anytime with the shoulder buttons. From there, you can fly towards or away, throw ki blasts, and of course, punch and kick the living heck out of them. Each successful hit moves this power meter below to your end, with stronger attacks building more. Once the meter goes to full, whichever character you're using gets a Meteo attack, the signature move. The Kamehamehas, Final Flashes, Makanko Sappo, you name it. Once that's over, it's back to the fight, and it keeps going until one team is down. Now, if you notice, there are 2 bars for each character, one green and the other yellow. The latter is pretty obvious because just by playing, you know that it's your energy. If you run out, you get fatigued and you won't be able to do jack for a couple of seconds. The former is the health, and it only goes down during the Meteo attack, which means all the flurry of blows, double overhands, ki blasts that you do only affect the power meter below. I think you can see a flaw with this already. If you're against a tough CPU opponent or, God forbid, another player with similar skill, then that means it'll be a long back and forth before anyone actually takes damage. Oh, and these Meteo attacks aren't skippable. And each one takes somewhere between 10 to 50 seconds. Shoutouts to Goku Spirit Ball, by the way. That takes just as long as the series. So yeah, it's kinda awful, to put it lightly. But you know what? It's Dragon Ball. And Little Mouse says, Dragon Ball is cool. And I concur with myself. So let's check out the main campaign. That should make up for it. Right? Dragon Ball Z though, Idainaru Dragon Ball Densetsu. Okay, that's too long. Let's just... Dragon Ball The Legend takes you to all the DBZ sagas. From the arrival of Vegeta to Boo chocofying the population, you get to relive the greatest battles in the show's history. Like, I don't know, fighting against the Ginyu forces. That's iconic, I guess. I mean, seriously, Raccoon is a playable character, but Yamcha's not? Man, he really doesn't stop taking L's. But don't worry, you're still a king in my eyes. Oh, where was I? Oh, yeah. The battles. Each of the 7 stages in this campaign is a succession of fights similar to how they arrive in the show. Before each fight, you'll be led to a waiting room of sorts where you could choose which of the available characters you'll bring out. Don't ask me why it's called chain and over to pick who you're gonna be active. Once set, your chosen team fights that episode's opponents, either one by one or as a team. In each fight, you are mostly at a numerical advantage, so you can dogpile on enemies pretty easily. It gets tougher during full team battles if you don't know what you're doing. If you're comboed, you can switch to the next person to try and break the other out, but you will get chased down by the other team. So it's always best practice to switch back to one guy fights one guy mode until one of them goes down. You can also trivialize every fight by doing this. I was mostly playing in normal mode, so I thought this wouldn't work on higher difficulty. I turned it up to max and yeah, it's the same thing. It seems that they're always programmed to run away and try to key charge, and interrupting them greatly diminishes their stamina. So this always leads to them in a fatigued state, allowing you to pile down the damage almost indefinitely. I did this for every single level, and honestly, thank God. My campaign's entire run, with no character death and just cheesing through every fight, still lasted past 1.5 hours. Take note, all the fights are essentially the same, so doing this over and over and over again really started to grind me down. At the end of each level, you get something called a Z-score. Now, remember this, it's gonna come up in the quiz. Back when I played this, it was in Japanese. Knowing some of the language now, navigating becomes a breeze. But even with the language barrier, the menu options are barebone and intuitive, with campaign, versus, and option at start. You would probably only care about translation when it comes to the opening narrations and titles per story mode stage. I'm not sure if the panels were taken from the manga, but they're pretty cool, giving that previously on Dragon Ball Z kind of vibe. After that, however, I, for the life of me, do not understand why I thought the graphics were good before booting this up again. They're pretty low quality even on PS1 standards. I understand that combining 2D sprites and 3D environments was, and still is, a challenging concept to pull off, even at a decent level, but the empty vibes I feel in every fight is really a downer. The meteor attacks convey an attempt at camera work, but the low quality of the models and the polygons just don't make it as fantastic as it should be. The battle scenes, while varied, are mostly barren. I know, that's a point, right, with humanity's safety, but at least let me smack someone through, 3 mountains. There's one thing that's cool about this though, is that there is a level of spectacle during the brawls. This is still a 3-dimensional space, so seeing your allies zooming around from different angles and directions gives the scene much needed spice and chaos. So while you're stun-locking your opponent, you can see others zooming about trading flurries of blows. If the graphics were a little better, or something like this gets a modern remake, I'm sure it'll look awesome. In the sound department, there's sadly nothing of note. At the very least, the sound effects are true to the show with the punches and the when you hit so hard they fly 100 feet. And oh, there's also a neat rendition of We Got a Power during the credits after beating the campaign. But let's go back to the episodes first. Here's the quick rundown. There's the Saiyan Invasion, Namek Part 1 where you fight the Ginyu Force, Namek Part 2 versus Frieza, the 5 androids, the Cell Games, the Bura and Fat Boo, the Thinner Boo, and then Super Boo. And all the fights are long, with the most annoying being the Cell episode, because I fought through a bunch of Cell Juniors before realizing I could probably just kill Cell. Or maybe I was on the right track. At least that's what a Z-score told me. Remember that? Yeah, so I finally discovered what it does. It determines how faithful you are to the actual plot. From who fights who, to who kills who, You have to essentially recreate the entire anime within the game. Right now, I'm gonna tell you getting a high Z score is not worth it, because according to the guides, all you get is a picture collage. I mean, it looks cool, I agree, but think about the effort needed to pull this off. Also, doesn't this kinda ruin the point of it being a game? I mean, why wouldn't I just watch the show again? It's not even the reward. Heck, even if the reward is something actually amazing, I still wouldn't do it. Because why? I mean, the combat is bland and repetitive. There's no actual character variety other than a cinematic one, and now you want a player to follow a script? Nah, man. Don't get me wrong, re-experiencing an anime via game has always been a thing. Just check out Dragon Ball Z Kakarot or something like that. But at least in that game, there's actual things to do before and during the fight, real options and variety, and... Okay, stop. Now, it's obvious that I'm a little bit disappointed. But I have to ask myself, like, why? Because I played a bad video game? We all play bad video games. Though, it never really stopped us. When I was young, there were no bad video games. There were boring ones, sure. Confusing ones, definitely. But bad was never part of my vocabulary. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't play it. And I played the heck out of this game. Does that make my childhood bad? Hell no, I got to play video games as a kid. So, this disappointment I'm feeling is probably just me, unfortunately, growing old. It's that curse of knowing better. And besides, isn't this supposed to be a tribute to Toriyama-sensei? I mean, sure, the game sucks. But one can see it as a power of his influence, how good he was at creating simple yet unforgettable stories anyone can enjoy. His legacy has surpassed himself, surpassed anime, surpassed time, surpassed borders. Everywhere you go, from an anime convention to a football stadium, you see Dragon Ball. Your favorite manga is probably inspired by Dragon Ball, just as Oda, Kishimoto, Kubo. And all this that I'm saying is merely a key blast to the Genki Dama that was Toriyama-san's impact in art, culture, and life. One bad game is not gonna change that. So Dragon Ball Z, Idainaru Dragon Ball Densetsu, goes into a huge pile of bad Dragon Ball games. But right beside it is an even bigger pile of awesome ones, ready to Wolfgang fist you right in the nostalgia. That was probably the worst way I can end an episode, but Yamcha is my guy, so this one is also for you. This has been A Large Mouse.